Hey there. Let's dive into something really important today. We're tackling this fascinating space where brain science, cultural values, and AI kind of crash together.
Yeah, especially when you think about putting AI, like generative AI, into schools.
Exactly. And we're grounding this whole discussion in some specific research, right?
We are. It's a paper by Professor Hyoungbin Park. It really digs into neurophilosophy, the moral judgments of Korean teachers, and why that matters for AI ethics guidelines.
Even talking about like an AI ethics certification.
Precisely. It's about making AI safe and, well, appropriate for specific places.
So picture generative AI in a classroom,
hmm
helping teachers, maybe creating lesson plans.
Tailoring things for students sounds potentially great.
Right, sounds great. But Professor Park's work points out this power has some real ethical sticky points, things current guidelines maybe don't fully cover.
Absolutely. Think about AI trained on biased data, just spitting out content that's biased or maybe inappropriate for kids.
And in school, that's not just annoying.
No, it can genuinely confuse students about, important social norms or values. The paper highlights this. If AI gives Korean students stuff that clashes with their teachers' common sense morality.
It could really mess with their value formation.
Exactly. That's a big concern.
And then there's just the unpredictability of it all.
Right. Generative AI can make hyper-realistic fakes, deep fakes.
Yeah, and its outputs can be really hard to guess beforehand, which makes it tough to even figure out the ethical impact ahead of time.
UNESCO's flagged this globally, too. They're pushing for ethical checks on educational AI to avoid bias, discrimination,
Even threats to cultural diversity, which is key here.
which leads right back to the paper's argument. Ethical AI isn't just a tech problem you fix with code.
You need more.
You need to understand how humans actually make moral judgments.
Mhm.
And, really importantly, recognize the specific values of different cultures.
Okay, so how do we understand human moral judgment? This is where neurophilosophy comes in. Sounds a bit academic.
It does, maybe, but the idea is pretty intuitive, actually. Neurophilosophy basically blends brain science, neuroscience, with philosophical questions about the mind, morality.
Using data about brain activity to understand why we think something is right or wrong.
You got it. It suggests our moral decisions aren't just abstract rules we learn. They're tied to what's physically happening in our brains.
Like the dual process theory stuff.
Exactly. That's a key part. The idea that we have two main ways of deciding things. System one, that's the fast, intuitive, emotional gut reaction.
And system two is the slower, more logical, deliberate thinking, weighing the options.
Precisely. And neurophilosophy, using things like brain scans, shows how both emotional intuition and logical reasoning are tangled up in our moral choices. It's not one or the other.
That's fascinating. So human morality is complex, it's messy, a mix of gut feeling and careful thought.
Right. So trying to build ethics into AI that interacts with us means we need to get beyond simple rule following. We need to grapple with this more, well, human process.
Understanding the how of human judgment gives us clues for AI ethics.
Exactly. Clues about what kind of ethics AI needs to convincingly mimic, or at least respect. But then there's the other crucial piece. The what? What are the actual values?
Right, the cultural dimension. Why the specific focus in Professor Park's work on the Korean context and teachers specifically.
Because that common sense moral judgment, well, it isn't universal in practice. Culture shapes it massively.
You see that in surveys, right?
Definitely. The World Values Survey shows huge variations globally. In Korea, you've got this unique blend. Influences from traditional values like Confucianism, thinking about respect, harmony, duty.
Mixed with more modern secular norms.
Precisely. And teachers are right there on the front lines shaping those values in the next generation.
They're not just teaching subjects.
No way. In Korea, they play a huge role in character education. Their everyday moral judgments in the classroom, those reflect the practical ethical standards of that specific cultural and educational setting.
Okay, so if you're making an AI ethics certification for Korean schools, it's not enough for the AI to just follow some abstract universal rules.
That's the core insight from the research. It needs to be more sophisticated.
It has to somehow align with both the way humans judge that complex mixed neurophilosophy reveals
Uh-huh.
and the specific values that Korean teachers instinctively apply in their context.
That's it, exactly. The certification needs to check for cultural appropriateness, how the AI might influence those intuitive gut responses, and if its behavior fits the common sense morality educators uphold there.
So it's about harmonizing universal ideas with local human reality.
Perfectly put.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean? This deep dive into Professor Park's work, it really shows us that building ethical AI, especially for sensitive spots like education in diverse cultures, it's way more than a tech challenge.
Absolutely. It demands we look inward, using insights from things like neurophilosophy to grab the complex, often intuitive ways we make moral calls.
And we need to look outward too, recognizing that ethical AI has to reflect the specific cultural values and norms of the people actually using it, like the common sense morality of Korean teachers in this case.
It's that combination that's key.
And here's something really interesting to chew on. If our own moral compass is this blend of, universal brain stuff and specific cultural learning,
Yeah.
and AI is increasingly working within and shaping those cultural spaces,
Yeah.
how do we build AI ethics that truly capture this complexity in a way that actually benefits everyone?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Can an AI ever really get the nuances of context, intuition, deeply held cultural values without experiencing the world like a human?
Probably not in the same way. It raises fundamental questions.
Definitely something to think about as AI keeps racing ahead.